I never thought I'd poison my mother-in-law's eggnog with truth serum, metaphorically speaking. Of course, but there I was, watching her choke on her own lies as the family stared in stunned silence. It started with her voice slicing through the holiday cheer like a carving knife. Valentina can't give you children. Mark. She's barren. I've known for months. My husband didn't flinch. Instead, he slapped a folder of lab results onto the table, his knuckles white, and said,
No, Mom.
You've been lying for years. It's you who's been barren all along, and you let me think it was her fault our marriage was crumbling. That Christmas Eve in our sprawling McMansion outside Chicago, the air smelled of pine needles and resentment, the kind that festers like untreated wounds in a Midwest winter. I'd spent the afternoon basting the turkey, stringing lights on the 9-foot Fraser fir we'd chopped down ourselves from that overpriced tree farm in Wisconsin. All while Evelyn, my mother-in-law, the queen of passive-aggressive potlucks, hovered like a storm cloud, critiquing every sprig of holly. She was the epitome of wasp perfection, silver-streaked bob, pearl earrings that screamed old money, and a smile sharp enough to draw blood. Mark and I had been married 5 years, navigating the choppy waters of his corporate climb at Deloitte and my freelance graphic design gigs that barely paid the mortgage on our fixer-upper. We wanted kids, God. We wanted them, but after 2 miscarriages and a string of fertility tests that left me feeling like a lab rat, the doctors shrugged and said, unexplained infertility. Unexplained. Like a ghost haunting our bedroom. Evelyn had inserted herself early, the doting MIL who just wanted to help. She dragged me to her OBGYN in Oak Park, the one with the leather-bound waiting room magazines from 1992, whispering about alternative therapies and holistic cleanses that tasted like regret and cayenne pepper. I trusted her because Mark did. She was his rock after his dad bailed for a younger model when he was 12, leaving her to raise him in that cavernous Evanston house full of antiques and echoes. But trust is a fragile thing, especially when it's laced with her brand of concern. She'd cry at family dinners about grandkids she'd never hold, then corner me in the kitchen. Have you considered adoption? Or surrogacy? Mark deserves an heir.
Heir.
Like we were in some Downton Abbey reboot, not scraping by on 401k, and student loans. The hook of that night was her announcement, dropped like a grenade amid the clink of crystal stemware. We'd just finished Grace, her Grace, always invoking family blessings with that sanctimonious lilt when she cleared her throat and fixed her gaze on me. Darling, she said, her voice honeyed venom. It's time we all faced facts. The tests are conclusive. Valentina's barren. She'll never carry a child. The room went arctic. My sister-in-law, Tara, dropped her fork. Mark's Uncle Bob choked on his mashed potatoes. I felt the heat rise in my cheeks, a flush that had nothing to do with the mulled wine. Barren. The word landed like a slap, echoing the shame I'd buried under yoga mats and positive affirmations. But Mark, he didn't gasp or defend. He reached under his chair, pulled out that manila folder, the one I'd found hidden in his briefcase 2 weeks earlier, and stood, his 6-foot frame casting a shadow over the poinsettia centerpiece. Mom, he said, his voice steady as Lake Michigan ice. These papers say otherwise. Valentina's tests are clean, fertile as spring. But yours, from 98. When you hid Dad's vasectomy to keep up appearances, they show you've been barren since before I was born. You switched her results with your old ones. Why? The table erupted, but not in my defense. Evelyn's face crumpled into theatrical tears, her hands fluttering like dying birds. Mark, how could you believe her? She's poisoning you against me. Poisoning. The irony wasn't lost on me as I gripped my linen napkin, knuckles aching. This was the betrayal I'd sensed but couldn't name, not just the lie about my body, but the deeper rot. Evelyn hadn't just meddled, she'd orchestrated my pain to protect her own facade. All those helpful doctor visits? She'd bribed the nurse, 20 years loyal to the family practice, to swap vials. I'd borne the grief of those miscarriages alone, blaming my defective womb, while she whispered doubts into Mark's ear during their weekly golf outings. She's not right for you, son. Can't even give you a legacy. Legacy. Her word, always, like our love, was a balance sheet in the red. But the real secret? It went back further, to a crime she'd buried deeper than her regrets. Mark's dad didn't just leave, he died overdose, hushed up as a heart attack to spare the family name. Evelyn had covered it, forging the coroner's report with a donation to the right pockets in Cook County. And when Mark, reeling from the loss at 18, started spiraling, booze, bad crowds, she'd pinned a minor theft on me during our first date. A necklace missing from her vanity that magically reappeared after I confessed to calm things down. I'd taken the hit, naive and in love, letting her mold me into the villain so she'd bless our engagement. I'd borne her sins, layer by layer, until I was the scapegoat for her crumbling empire of lies. As the accusations flew, Bob muttering about disgrace, Tara texting furiously under the table, I slipped into the kitchen, heart pounding like a bass drum in a blues club. The fridge hummed, a lonely sentinel amid the chaos, stocked with Evelyn's organic cranberries and my bootleg bourbon. I poured a splash into a tumbler, the amber liquid catching the under-cabinet lights like forbidden fire. Revenge wasn't a plan, it was a spark, ignited by years of her gaslighting. I'd found the folder by accident, rifling through Mark's files for tax docs, but the truth hit like a freight train, Evelyn's medical history. Sealed but cracked open by a PI I'd hired on a whim after the second miscarriage. Cost me $3,000 from my emergency fund, but it was worth every penny. Her barrenness wasn't just medical, it was emotional, a void she'd filled by sabotaging anyone who threatened her grip on Mark. I returned to the dining room, folder in hand now, my heels clicking on the hardwood like a countdown. Evelyn was mid-soliloquy, dabbing her eyes with a monogrammed hanky. She's manipulative.
Mark.
Always has been. Remember the necklace? She stole it to test your loyalty. Mark's jaw tightened, he knew. We talked in whispers after I showed him the PI's report, late nights in our king bed, tangled in sheets stained with tears and takeout. He'd confronted her privately, begged for the truth. But she'd flipped it, gaslit him into doubting his own eyes. Your wife's turning you paranoid, son. Next it'll be delusions of grandeur. Enough, I said, my voice cutting through like a siren on the Dan Ryan. I slapped the folder down beside Mark's. Pages splaying like fallen leaves. Evelyn's falsified autopsy on her husband. The bribed nurse's affidavit, procured via anonymous email from a guilty conscience. Even bank records showing payoffs to silence the ghosts of her past. The family leaned in, a collective intake of breath. Evelyn's eyes widened, not in fear, but calculation. Will's turning behind that Botox facade. Fabrications, she hissed. She's framed me, just like I knew she would. Mark flipped to the fertility swap, dates matching her helpful appointments. Nurse's signature forged in looping cursive. This ends tonight.
Mom.
No more lies. No more controlling my life or Valentina's. But here's where the controversy brewed. Mark's stand wasn't pure heroism. He'd known for weeks. Stewed in silence while I planned our quiet divorce over bad coffee at a Starbucks in Naperville. He'd chosen loyalty to her, his mother. Blood over me. Until the PI's final email dropped the autopsy bomb. Was he my knight? Or just a man finally cornered? The dinner devolved into a battlefield, Tara siding with Evelyn, family first. Bob neutral, but eyeing the ham like escape. I watched Evelyn's mask crack, her cunning flipping to victimhood, then back to attack. You think you're righteous? I did it for you, Mark, to spare you the shame I carried.
Shame.
The word hung, heavy as the snow piling outside our bay windows. She'd borne no shame. She'd exported it to me. The outsider with immigrant grandparents from Sicily. My exotic accent, long faded, a perpetual punchline at her bridge club. As plates grew cold, I felt the tension coil. A spring ready to snap. Revenge wasn't spilling secrets, it was the slow unraveling, forcing her to confront the void she'd created. But Evelyn? She adapted. Always the chameleon. By dessert, my pecan pie. Ironically, her recipe, she'd pivoted. Perhaps we all owe apologies. Valentina.
Dear.
I was scared. Losing your father. It broke me. Crocodile tears. But laced with a plea only Mark heard. He softened. Just a fraction. His hand brushing mine under the table, a silent, "We'll fix this." We didn't. Not that night. As the clock struck midnight, carols mocking from the speakers, Evelyn excused herself to the powder room. I followed. The hallway a gauntlet of family photos, Mark's gap-toothed grin, her triumphant smile at his graduation. In the marble vanity, she cornered me, mirror reflecting twin predators. You think you've won?
He's mine.
Always will be. Her breath, minty from Altoids, carried the rot of entitlement. I leaned in, voice low. No, Evelyn. But tonight, you lose the illusion. Back in the dining room, Mark announced we'd leave early. For space. Suitcases packed in the foyer. A hasty exit under the guise of a snowstorm. But as we drove into the whiteout, wipers slapping rhythmically, I glanced back at the glowing windows. Evelyn stood on the porch, silhouette unbowed, waving like a victor. The papers? Mere kindling. Her real weapon was blood, thicker than any ink. That was just the beginning. The real revenge simmered, a pot left too long on the stove, threatening to boil over into something irreversible. The fallout from Christmas hit like a polar vortex, freezing our lives into jagged shards that no amount of hot toddies could thaw. Mark and I holed up in our Lincoln Park apartment, a cozy two-bedroom with exposed brick and a view of the L train rattling by like intrusive thoughts, nursing wounds and whiskey while the city buried itself under 2 feet of snow. News traveled fast in our family group chat, a cesspool of passive-aggressive emojis and Tara's forwarded articles on toxic in-laws. Evelyn went radio silent. Her usual barrage of forwarded chain emails, prayer for healing families, replaced by crickets. But silence from her was never peace. It was strategy. A regrouping in her war room of a sunroom. Surrounded by crystal decanters and dog-eared self-help books, she never cracked. I threw myself into work. Pixels and deadlines a balm for the soul sickness. My latest gig, rebranding a craft brewery in Pilsen. All hoppy logos and Instagram filters that screamed, artisanal escape. But escape was a joke. Every night, Mark paced our galley kitchen, phone in hand, debating text to his mom. She raised me,
Val.
alone. After Dad, he'd trail off. eyes on the floorboard scarred from a century of Chicago renters. I got it. Grief's a thief. Stealing clarity, but understanding didn't dull the blade. He'd stood with the papers. Sure. But only after I'd unearthed them. And in those quiet hours before dawn, when the city hummed with distant sirens, I'd wonder, was I avenging us? Or just clawing back my dignity from a woman who'd made me her doormat? The buried secret festered, demanding air. Turns out, Evelyn's barrenness wasn't just biology, it was the cornerstone of her empire of deceit. The PI's report, emailed in a PDF that felt heavier than lead, detailed how, post-Dad's heart attack, she'd frozen her eggs in a last-ditch bid for control, only to learn they were non-viable. Devastated, she'd spun a narrative, Mark as her miracle. The late bloomer, conceived in a fling before the wedding. His real father some anonymous donor she'd romanced in the 70s free love haze. But the autopsy twist? Dad had no deed on pills. He confronted her about the affair. The forged marriage certificate to legitimize Mark. In rage, she'd pushed him down the basement stairs during a heated argument over holiday lights. No charges. Thanks to her lawyer's accidental fall plea and an envelope of cash to the responding officer. I'd borne the echo of that crime, her projecting her guilt onto me, the unstable daughter-in-law who stole her son, mirroring how she'd stolen Mark's origins. Mark crumbled when I showed him the full file. Over takeout lo mein from Joy Yee's. Steam curling like ghosts. She killed him? For me. His voice broke. A grown man reduced to the boy who'd found his father at the foot of those stairs. Blood pooling on the concrete like spilled Kiani. I'd held him then, rocking on our thrift store couch, murmuring Chicago platitudes. The past is Lakeshore Drive. Keep driving.
But revenge?
It whispered louder. Not violence, I'm no Tarantino heroine, but exposure. The American way. Leak it to the right ears. Watch the dominoes fall. Evelyn struck first. Of course. A week post-Christmas, as the plows cleared Lake Street, she filed for a wellness check on Mark. Cops at our door at 7 a.m. Badges gleaming under the sodium lamps. Asking if he'd been despondent. She'd spun it. I'd driven him to suicidal thoughts with my witch hunt. Mark laughed it off, dark, bitter laugh that echoed his dad's. From old home videos, but the damage stuck. Neighbors whispered. My freelance clients ghosted. Tara called. Voice syrupy. Val, you're stressing him out. Mom's just worried. Blood's thicker. You know. Thicker than what? The lies we'd swallowed? I flipped the script that afternoon. Anonymous tip to the Chicago Tribune's tip line. Evanston's socialite covers up husband's death for decades. No names yet, just enough to hook a hungry reporter sniffing for scandal in the burbs. Then, the real play. I hacked her email. Not ethically, borrowed Mark's old password, Mom S-Boy87. The one she'd mocked him for keeping. Inboxes bloated with CCs to her lawyer. Drafts of character assassinations, me as the gold-digging Sicilian schemer, Mark as brainwashed. But the gem? Correspondence with the nurse. Payoffs logged as charity donations to a shell foundation. Evelyn. Ever the mountebank. Flipping from victim to villain in keystrokes. If she pushes, bury her in lawsuits. Family legacy above all. We confronted her at her house. Unannounced. Valentine's Day Eve. Irony thick as heart-shaped boxes at Walgreens. Snow crunched under our boots as we trudged the driveway. Past her Tesla wrapped in a giant bow, self-gift. Naturally. She answered in cashmere. Martini in hand. Feigning delight. Darlings. Come for reconciliation. Mark thrust the printouts. I live-streamed discreetly on my phone. angled to catch her flinch. It's over.
Mom.
The truth comes out, tomorrow, if you don't confess. Her eyes darted, cunning sparking like flint. Confess? To what? Exactly? A push in self-defense? He was coming at me with a lamp, raving about your father. Flip. Now Dad was the monster. Mark's real lineage a curse she'd spared him. Mark staggered. Hand on the doorframe carved with their initials, M.E. Plus J.R. A lie etched in oak. You let me grieve a lie. Blame Val for your sins. Evelyn pivoted. Tears on cue. I protected you. From scandal. From pity. She's the one destroying us. Jealous. Barren rage. Barren. The word again. A whip crack. But Mark held firm. No. We're done enabling. We left her sobbing on the Persian rug. But as we peeled out, her text buzzed. You'll regret this. Family courts love grandmas. The tension ratcheted. A vice on our throats. Mark's promotion at Deloitte? Stalled. Whispers of personal issues. My designs? Rejected for lack of warmth. Evelyn's web. Spun from country club connections. I doubled down. Mailing copies to Uncle Bob, the family archivist. Hoarder of skeletons in his Hammond attic. He called. Voice quavering. Val. This. It's dynamite. But she's my sister. Blood.
Blood.
The controversy brewed. Was either righteous avenger or a vengeful harpy tearing at familial seams. Mark and I fought, ugly. Plate-smashing rows in our breakfast nook. Him defending flickers of her humanity. She was broken. Val. Me hurling accusations. You stood with papers, but your heart's still hers. We'd make up in fevered apologies. Bodies colliding like storm fronts. But the rift widened. One night, post-coital haze, he confessed, I almost believed her swap. Thought maybe. You were holding back. Career over kids. Betrayal's echo. Deep as Lake Michigan. Spring thawed the literal ice. But not our chill. Tribune ran a teaser. Decades-old cover-up in North Shore Elite. Evelyn lawyered up. Countersuing for defamation me. The unstable spouse. Court dates loomed like thunderheads over the loop. But her flip came swift. Leaked audio to a gossip blog. Her voice pleading. Mark's wife is unhinged, framing me to steal the house. House, the Evanston manse. Willed to him. Her dower writes a noose. I countered with the nurse's testimony. Flown in from Florida, on my maxed visa. Deposition in a sterile loop office. Fluorescents buzzing like angry bees. Evelyn arrived in Chanel, flanked by sharks and pinstripes. Lies, she spat at the recorder. But the nurse, 60 now, retired, conscience clawing, detailed the swap, Mrs. Hargrove begged. Said it was mercy for the marriage.
Mercy.
Her word. Twisted. Climax brewed that May. Mother's Day brunch at the Oak Street Beach Club. Her choice. Neutral ground. Waves lapped Lake Michigan. Gulls screeching judgment. Family assembled. Tara glaring. Bob fidgeting with his bifocals. Evelyn, radiant in linen, raised a mimosa to mothers who sacrifice. Mark stood, voice amplified by the salt wind, and to truths that set us free. He played the audio, Dad's last call, slurred but damning, accusing her of the affair. Gasps rippled, Tara wept. Evelyn? She rose, glass shattering on tile. You ingrate. I built this family. The split. Half the table, Bob. Distant cousins toasting exposure, the other, Tara's faction, decrying betrayal of kin.
Me?
I watched, heart in my throat, as Mark chose. No more.
Mom.
We're selling the house. Starting fresh. Fresh, with or without me. His eyes met mine. Conflicted. The papers from Christmas, now ashes in our minds. But Evelyn's cunning peaked as we filed out. She cornered him by the valet, whispering promises of therapy, amends. He hesitated, seconds that stretched eternal. I drove home alone. Radio blasting Springsteen, Born to Run. Revenge tasted bittersweet. Victory hollow. Was I liberator or destroyer? Summer scorched Chicago like a grudge held too long. Humidity turning the air into a sauna of unspoken accusations. Mark and I rented a bungalow in Rogers Park. A temporary bunker with creaky fans and a porch swing that groaned under our silences. The Evanston house sold in a fire sale, $1.2 million to a tech bro from Silicon Valley. Oblivious to the ghosts in the grout, splitting proceeds down the middle. Half to Evelyn's rehab, her spin. Emotional. Not legal. Half to our Fresh Start fund. Fresh Start. The phrase dangled like a carrot on a stick, but Mark's eyes wandered to his phone. Evelyn's Texas sirens call. Miss you. Son. Let's talk. Without her influence, I'd won the battle. But war? It was her terrain. The Tribune piece dropped in June. Front page fodder. Socialite's dark secret. Push led to husband's death. Fertility fraud expose. Photos. Her booking mug from '98. Airbrushed but unmistakable. Me. Pixelated in the sidebar as whistleblower wife. Public split. Reddit threads exploded. AATA for ruining Emile's life? Polls leaning 60/40ths my way. But comments a minefield. Empowering takedown versus family executioner, cold bitch. Controversy. As promised, no heroes. Just flawed warriors in a cage match of kin. Evelyn flipped again. Masterfully. Press conference in her garden. Hydrangeas blooming like false innocence. I'm the real victim, slandered by a woman scorned. Scorned? I'd borne her crimes. The necklace frame up, pawned, then recovered to paint me thief. The miscarriages she'd exacerbated with stressful interventions, her cleanses laced with unregulated herbs, per talk screens. And the deeper sin, she'd confessed to Mark, pre-wedding, that I was wrong stock, too ethnic, too ambitious for his legacy. I'd overheard, drunk on wedding eve champagne, but swallowed it for love. Borne it, like a penance for sins not mine. Mark wavered. His Deloitte suits rumpled from all-nighters poring over depositions. She's broken.
Val.
Therapy's helping, group sessions at Northwestern. Helping? Her emails I'd glimpsed, password unchanged. Hubris her Achilles plotting appeals. Smearing me to his boss as distracted by drama. Our sex life? Frosty. Mechanical. Like assembling IKEA regrets. 1 July 4th. Fireworks blooming over Navy Pier. He dropped the bomb. I need space. To process. Process. Code for her hooks and deeper. Revenge evolved, not scorched earth, but surgical strikes. I leaked the nurse's full affidavit to a podcaster. Midwest Mayhem. Episodes charting true crime tea in flyover states. Listeners lapped it. Valentina's a queen, exposing the coven. But backlash bit. Death threats in my DMs. Patriarchy's last stand. Whore. Tara unfriending me with a Bible verse on forgiveness.
Mark?
He attended her reconciliation dinner, sans moi, at a Gold Coast steakhouse. Emerging bleary-eyed. Smelling of scotch and betrayal. She apologized. Said the push was accident. Panic.
Accident.
Like my grief was incidental. I countered with my own flip. Hired a therapist. Not for healing, but strategy.
Dr.
Lena. A no-nonsense black woman from Bronzeville with a laugh like thunder. Unpacked my complicity. You bore her sins. Valentina. Why?
Why?
Love.
I said.
Survival. Sicilian blood. Stubborn. Volcanic. But Sessions unearthed my controversy. I'd known about the swap early. Suspected after the first test, but delayed confrontation for peace. Cowardice? Or calculus? Waiting for ironclad proof? August heat wave peaked with the trial, civil suit. Her suing for emotional distress, me countersuing for defamation and fraud. Cook County Courthouse. A behemoth of marble and misery. Corridors echoing with sobs and soliloquies. Evelyn testified first. Perched like a dowager on the stand, Valentina orchestrated this, jealous of my bond with Mark.
Bond.
The word curdled. I'd seen the photos. Preemie, her and toddler Mark at Disney. His eyes adoring. Hers possessive. Jurors, blue-collar mix. South Side steel shifted, skeptical of her pearls. My turn, voice steady, recounting the miscarriages, blood on tile. Her calling it God's will. The frame-ups, the buried push. Exhibits, emails, ledgers, even a voicemail, her drunk dialing Mark post-sale. You sold my soul for her lies. Gasps from the gallery. Tara stormed out. Mark, in the back row. Ty Askew. Face a mask. Cross-exam. Her lawyer. Slick as lake oil. Twisted. Ms. Rossi. Isn't this revenge for your own failures? Career over cradle. Cradle. The courtroom hushed. I met his eyes, cold. Appraising.
No.
It's justice for the child I'll have one day. Without poison. Deliberation dragged. 2 days of monsoon rains flooding the underpass. We waited in a diner across from the courthouse. Formica tables sticky with syrup ghosts. Mark's knee bounced, mine didn't. If we lose, he muttered. She gets the settlement. Our nest egg. Nest egg, ironic. For birds we'd never hatched. But win? It'd shatter her. Penniless in a condo. Legacy dust. Verdict me. $250,000 compensatory. Her. Liable for fraud. Restitution ordered. Cheers from my corner, Dr. Lena. The PI. A cousin from Cicero, with cannoli. Evelyn. Composed collapse. Monsters, she whispered. But eyes on Mark. Pleading. He rose. Approached the bar, then veered to her. Hugging. Hugging. The gallery murmured. My stomach dropped. Outside. Rain sheeting. He explained. Closure.
Val.
Not choice. Closure. But his hand lingered on her shoulder. A tether I couldn't sever. Fall leaves turned. Crimson accusations on pavement. We tried rebuilding. Fertility treatments. Real ones. At Rush, IVF roulette. Needles and hope. But Evelyn's shadow loomed. Anonymous letters to the clinic. Patient unstable. History of vendettas. Delays.
Doubts.
Mark defended. Paranoia.
Babe.
Let it go. Let it go. Like Elsa in that damn movie she quoted?
No.
Revenge's final coil tightened. Thanksgiving loomed. Neutral at Bob's in the suburbs, turkey thawed. Tension simmered. Evelyn RSVP'd. with amends. Amends. Her flip. Contrite emails to Mark. CCing me. Forgive. As family does. I prepped my twist. A folder of my own, not papers, but recordings. Our sessions.
DR.
Lena's wisdom. Forgiveness isn't absolution. Valentina. It's freedom from her. Dinner prayer. Her voice. Tremulous. For second chances. Plates passed. Wine poured. Mark's foot nudged mine. Signal? As pie sliced. Pumpkin. Store-bought peace offering. I rose. One truth left. Evelyn. Played the tape. Her voicemail. Unfiltered rage. You think you're free? I'll bury you both, grandkids or graves. Gasps anew. Bob dropped his fork. Her face, shock. Then steel. Doctored. Mark? He stood. Not with papers, but resolve. No more. But his eyes torn. Pleading my mercy. Controversy peaked. Forgive the monster who birthed him? Or avenge the woman she'd erased? I paused the player. Room suspended. Your choice. Evelyn. Confess, fully or it airs. She stared. Cunning fracturing.
I. Pushed.
In fear. For him. Admission. Partial. Poisonous. Family divided. Bob nodding. Tara fleeing.
Me?
I sat. Heart thundering. Victory? Or Pyrrhic? Chains of her making still binding us? Winter whispered endings. But mine brewed darker. December's chill crept back. A familiar foe. Frosting windows with memories of that first betrayal dinner. Mark and I navigated a fragile truce, counseling twice weekly. Dates at hidden gems like the Wiener Circle for chili dogs and anonymity, but Evelyn's partial confession hung like tinsel on barbed wire. For him, she'd said. The words a half measure. Enough to stall the podcast drop, but not douse the fire. Public opinion swung. TikToks leonizing me as revenge wife, countervids from her bridge club painting her persecuted matriarch. Comment sections war zones. Slay. Queen versus. Blood over bitches. Val's the real villain. I'd borne her sins so long. They felt like mine. The push. The fraud. The emotional extortion.
But now?
The scales tipped. Heavy with her weight. Mark's loyalty fractured daily. Nights he'd vanish for drives, returning with her perfume on his collar. Chanel no. 5. Eternal. Just talked, he'd claim, but his eyes dodged like semis on the Eisenhower.
DR.
Lena called it Stockholm Echoes, trauma bonds, forged in her cradle of control. I called it bullshit, but swallowed it. Sicilian pride a straitjacket. Revenge's next phase, financial evisceration. With my settlement, I hired forensic accountants, nerds in hoodies from UIC, tracing her charity shell to offshore havens in the Caymans. Turns out, Dad's life insurance padded not just cover-ups, but her lifestyle, spa retreats in Scottsdale, donations to Mark's campaigns, he'd run for alderman once, her puppet. I froze assets via court order. Her Tesla repossessed mid-commute to Pilates. Her flip, victim parade on local news. WGN interview from a rented studio apartment in Wilmette, stripped bare by my own daughter-in-law. Where's the mercy? Mercy. The word mocked. I'd begged it during miscarriages. Her response a tisk and try harder. Christmas approached. A gauntlet. Bob hosted again. Neutral turf in his split level with the aluminum tree that played Jingle Bells on a loop. Invites terse. No drama. Evelyn arrived early. Swathed in thrift store faux fur. Eyes hollow but sharp. Valentina, she greeted. Voice a rasp of defeat. Handshake offered, mine limp. Hers clawing. Mark hovered. Buffer and bomb. Dinner. Awkward symphony of silverware scrapes. Tara absent, too raw. Turkey dry as grudges. Yams candied with false sweetness. Post-grace. She cornered me in the laundry room. Maytag humming judgment.
You won.
Happy? He's slipping away, blames you for my fall.
Fall.
Like dad's. I met her gaze. Unflinching. You fell alone. Evelyn. Choices. But her cunning resurfaced. He's seeing my therapist now. Says you're obsessed. Revenge over love. Obsessed. The accusation stung. Mirror to my midnight scrolls through her socials. Private now. But leaks from friends. Back at table. Tension crackled. Bob cleared throat. Let's toast to healing. Glasses raised. But Mark's hand trembled. Healing, he echoed. Then added. Soft, Mom. The full truth. For us.
Us.
Ambiguous, who? Her eyes flicked to mine. Calculation. Ally or adversary. The affair. Your father. The donor. He was kind. Fleeting. Your dad knew fought. I pushed to stop him.
Protect our lie.
Barren after.
But you.
My miracle. Miracle. Twisted benediction. Mark paled. I gripped fork like a shank. Controversy ignited. Was her confession redemption? Or deflection? Blaming biology for brutality? Bob nodded sagely. I seethed.
And me?
The swap. The sabotage.
She sighed.
Theatrical. Fear. You'd take him. Leave me void.
Void.
Her barren heart. Projected. Post-dinner. As Bing Crosby crooned from tinny speakers, Mark pulled me aside, garage, amid boxes of holiday detritus. She's changing.
Val.
Real remorse. Changing. Like weather in the windy city, fickle. Fleeting. And you? Choosing her again. My voice cracked. Raw as peeled ginger. He cupped my face. Thumb tracing scar from a childhood bike crash in Little Italy. You.
But.
Family.
Family.
The word a wedge. New Year's Eve sealed the rift. We planned a quiet one, champagne on our balcony. Skyline ablaze, but he bailed for her emergency. Panic attack. Doc says. I drove to Wilmette alone. Snow-slicked Kennedy a blur. Her building, bland brick. Buzzer echoing my pulse. No answer until the super. Buzzed in by concerned daughter-in-law. Apartment 4B. Door ajar. Lights dim. Inside. Evelyn. Slumped on futon. Pill bottle, Xanax. Half empty, beside a note. Can't bear the void. Forgive. Staged or sincere? Mark arrived. Frantic. Cradling her as paramedics swarmed. Are at Swedish. Overdose. Non-fatal. Intent unclear. Unclear. Like her motives. He blamed me. Whisper hiss in the waiting room. Your leaks pushed her here.
Pushed.
Echo of dad. I fired back. Your enabling built the ledge. Nurses shushed. A janitor mopping nearby nodded sympathy. She recovered. Of course, Evelyn. The cat with 9 lives funded by bad checks. Discharge. Her in his arms. Me trailing like baggage. Home. Our bungalow now temporary. She installed herself. Recovery support. Support. Code for siege. Days blurred. Her cooking traditional meals, overcooked osso buco. Mocking my roots. Critiquing my clutter, sketch pads, fertility charts. Mark softened. Laughs shared over Jeopardy reruns, her trivia queen. My revenge? Stalled. Poisoned by pity's vine. But the twist coiled. February. My period late. Test in drugstore bathroom. Fluorescent hell. Positive.
Joy.
Terror. Ours? Or hers? Via sabotage? I hid it. Consulted DR. Lena. Weapon or wonder? Wonder. She urged. But doubt gnawed. Evelyn's vitamins during her stay. Pilfered from her purse. Labels warning. Not for pregnant. Confrontation. Kitchen showdown. Her chopping celery for minestrone. The pills, what were they? Her knife paused. Eyes guileless. Just be 12.
Dear.
For energy.
Lie.
Smooth as silk. I produced the bottle, misoprostol. Abortive patient. Prescribed post-Barren diagnosis. Gasps mine, hers feigned. Mislabeled. Must be the pharmacy. Mark walked in.
Caught the tableau. Val?
Mom. Truth spilled. Pregnancy. Poison. His face. Horror. Then fury pure. Unfiltered. You tried to. Again, he lunged. Not violent, but restraining, her sobs theatrical. Accident. Swapped bottles in panic.
Panic.
Her perennial alibi. But this? Unforgivable. He called 911 not for her, but wellness check on me. Cops for theft. She flipped final. She's lying. Hysterical hormones. But the bottle damned her, Prince. Prescription mismatch. Climax. Arrest at dawn. Cuffs clicking like karma. Gallery. Neighbors gawking. Phones out for viral justice. Tara screamed betrayal. Bob sighed resignation.
Me?
Hand on belly. Mark's arms steal around me. Victory? Divided. Her trial loomed. Manslaughter charges unearthed. But Mark's eyes held shadows. Guilt for delays. Love for the life we'd almost lost. Spring bloomed.
Tentative.
Ultrasound. Heartbeat.
Fierce.
Evelyn?
Bail.
House arrest in her shoebox. Letters from lockup. Grandbaby. My redemption. Redemption. Debatable. Ending? Ours to write. The gavel's echo faded into spring symphony, robins warring over our bird feeder. Lake Michigan thawing with reluctant optimism, but Evelyn's trial cast long shadows over our bungalow's budding garden. Manslaughter. Fraud. Attempted harm, charges stacked like Jenga. Her legal team a revolving door of public defenders she charmed then blamed. Incompetent fools, she'd rant and collect call tirades to Mark. Voice crackling through the receiver like bad reception from hell. He took them less now. Our landline a relic gathering dust. But each ring twisted the knife. She's alone.
Val.
Sick.
Sick.
As if her rot excused the poison in my veins. Pregnancy anchored me. A secret bloom amid the thorns. Morning sick on the L to prenatal yoga. I'd traced the curve of my belly 6 weeks. Then 12, whispering Sicilian lullabies Mom taught me. Half remembered from her Rosemont kitchen. Mark, transformed guardian. Smoothies blended at dawn. Foot rubs under the L's rumble. Our fighter, he'd murmur. Hand splayed over the flutter. But nights. He'd wake sweating. Dreams of stairs. Pushes.
Voids.
Therapy helped. Joint sessions now.
DR.
Lena mediating our minefield. Boundaries.
Mark.
She's not your penance. Penance. The word fit. He'd borne her lies as I had mine. Public frenzy peaked. Court TV crew camped outside the courthouse. Mics thrust like spears. Evelyn's flip. Media darling. Wronged widow. Narrative spun in a Dateline special. Family betrayed. The push that shattered. Clips viral. Her in orange. Tear-streaked. I protected my son from her venom. Venom. Projections pinnacle. Backlash scorched me. Pickets at our gate. Free Evelyn. Eggs splattered on our Prius. Controversy crested. Petitions for her release. Maternal instinct gone awry. Versus. My GoFundMe for victims of familial abuse. 6 figures. Humbling. I'd borne the brunt. Depositions dredging miscarriages. Did stress from lies contribute?
Yes.
Per experts. Cross-exams probing my motives. Revenge porn for the infertile? Her lawyer. A weasel from the Gold Coast. MS. Rossi. Your heritage. Passionate. Impulsive. Did passion blind you to mercy? Heritage. Dog whistle for fiery Latina, though Sicily's no equator. I fired. Mercy? She denied me mine for years. Witnesses piled. The nurse. Remorseful relic, super from her building. Attesting erratic behavior. Even Tara. Crumbling under oath. She manipulated us all. But blood.
Blood.
The eternal tie. Fraying but fibrous. Mark testified last. Voice steady as Adler planetarium stars. She birthed me, but broke us. The push murder. The poison attempted. Tears. Not for show. Jury of 12. Diverse as Chicago's mosaic. Leaned in. Divided visibly. The mom of 3 nodding. The elder gent averting eyes. Deliberation. 3 days. City simmering in June haze. We waited at a Montrose diner. Perch on the lake. Waves mocking our churn. Mark's hand on my swell. Whatever. We're free.
Free.
But as verdict loomed, my water broke. Early labor. Contractions like contractions in court. Rush hour traffic a nightmare. Yard doors whooshed us into fluorescent frenzy. Breach, Doc said. C-section under lights. Mark gowned and gloved. Whispering. Push through. Love. She arrived at 7:42 p.m. Luca Maria Rossi Hargrove. 6 pounds 9 ounces. Cry piercing as a siren's wail. Mark wept. Cutting cord with trembling hands, I held him. Wait.
Luca.
Our boy. Dark curls like mine. Eyes blue as Mark's stout. Nurses cooed. World narrowed to his latch. Milk and miracle. Verdict dropped at midnight. Guilty. All counts. Sentence. 15 to 25. No parole first decade. Evelyn's reaction. Via TV in recovery. Collapse in bailiff arms. Wail echoing my miscarriages. My grandson. Denied. Denied. Her void. Eternal now. Twist landed post-sentencing. Her final letter. Smuggled via Tara, who'd softened. Anti-aspirations blooming. Valentina knew of the pregnancy. The vitamins. Not poison, fertility aid. Black market for my specialist. To ensure heir. Forgive or fear the blood in him.
Blood.
Hers. The donors. Mark's rage at the trial. Fueled by her whispers. I tested prenatal DNA. Discreet. Luca. Unequivocally ours. But the seed of doubt. Her aid, a final flip. Benevolence or bind. Debate eternal. Was she monster redeemed? Or manipulator to the grave? We named him Luca for light. Sicilian saints. Christmas is now ours. Tiny tree in the bungalow. Lights twinkling on his gummy grins. Mark stands firm. Papers of adoption, herself from our lives, filed and final. But nights, when wind howls off the lake, I wonder, did revenge free us? Or forge new chains? Ending, not tragedy, nor pure happy, ambiguous. Like Chicago fog. Luca's laugh. Our absolution. Evelyn's cell? Her mirror. And me? I bore it all for this.